I'm going to prove to you how that compensation is that really exclusive for the unwrongful convicted in terms of recovering the harms that they got during the jail, Mr. Speaker. Because we think that a lot of harms that already got by them. For example, psychological harms, Mr. Speaker. We think it's either the psychological harms should be, recovered as well before they are going to the jail, Mr. Speaker. And we think that it's very problematic. That will be deeper in my case. Or even how important that, this compensation could also, promote what exactly the idea of the justice for the doer, the unwrongful doer compared to the wrongful convicted. That will be deeper in my case. But before that, I'm going to deal toward the opposition cases as well. Firstly, when I think how the status quo is that really enough to recover toward the every single harms that already got by this by the unwrongful convicted, we think that they never prove what exactly the direct action comes from the government in terms of fulfilling the rights of the unwrongful doer itself, Mr. Speaker. For example, the harms of the rights that are being revealed, the rights that are revealed by the government in terms of gaining a job, Mr. Speaker. We think that they are lose for several amount of money because they could not go to the job, Mr. Speaker. Or even how comes that the family rights to be fulfilled by by the father who are jailed itself could not be recovered by the status quo itself, Mr. Speaker. So we think that how status quo is not that really enough to fulfill the harms that already got, Mr. Speaker. Second level, when I think how the compensation is not necessary because the life chance of an opportunity is that really given by the government. We are not debating about how that every single unlawful doer, unlawful victim have rights to live, Mr. Speaker. But we are debating how that the rights that are revealed by the government, that they are sacrificed to paid for during several years in jail, that should be paid as well, Mr. Speaker. We are not debating about the life because we think that this life is not that relevant, or it's not that really problematic within the status quo as well, Mr. Speaker. So I'm going to talk to you firstly why that compensation is not really exclusive, Mr. Speaker, to be given toward the unlawful convicted as well. Firstly, we think that how that this compensation is that really important to be given because the characteristic of this compensation could recover all things, the harms that is got by the unwrongful convicted. For example, Mr. Speaker, we think that characteristic of the jail, they are being pressed, Mr. Speaker. They are stressful as well, Mr. Speaker. And we think it could compromise toward the psychological as well, Mr. Speaker. How the psychological compromise toward the quality of their life, Mr. Speaker. We think that quality of their life is that compromissible toward their behavior, Mr. Speaker, to their daily activity, Mr. Speaker. Most importantly, Mr. Speaker, we think that psychology, psychology also as a capital for them, Mr. Speaker. For example, they should go to work, Mr. Speaker. In terms of they should go to work with their quite good rationality, Mr. Speaker, in fulfilling their jobs, Mr. Speaker. And we think that this compensation could be utilized by the every single unlawful convicted to go to the psychiatrist, Mr. Speaker, to recover how the harms that they are being pressed by the government itself, Mr. Speaker, or when they are being jailed within the status quo, Mr. Speaker. And we think that it is very important to be given by the government as a form of apologizing that that they are not wrongful as well, Mr. Speaker. And we think it is very important to begin with, Mr. Speaker. Proceed.
Sir, you still haven't explained to us why in a democracy, when the branches of the executive and judiciary are separated, the executive should apologize and indeed compensate for the judiciary's mistake.
We think that the injustice is the problem with the status quo is that really unjust, Mr. Speaker. Why I say so? In second level of arguments, there are my second arguments why that it is very unjust system, Mr. Speaker, within the status quo that is very problematic, Mr. Speaker. Compared to the convicted, Mr. Speaker, we think that government will punish toward the convicted itself and imply them toward the fine, Mr. Speaker. It shows that the action of the convicted should be followed by the responsibility, Mr. Speaker. Or most importantly, Mr. Speaker, that shows that fine or even punishment is that really showing that their action is that really wrong, Mr. Speaker. But compared to the unwrongful convicted, Mr. Speaker, when they are getting jailed, Mr. Speaker, and they are released by the government, and there is no follow-up comes from the government, Mr. Speaker, to recover the harms. We think that it is really unjust for, the unwrongful convicted when they are compared to the convicted, Mr. Speaker, when they are getting punished and also getting fined for the government, Mr. Speaker. How is status quo that really problematic, Mr. Speaker? Because we think that the harms of the job also, because we think that the harms are already got by the wrongful convicted is that really exists, Mr. Speaker. Third level, we think that that this concept of policy, this concept of our proposal could giving a platform for the victims to give up to access for their rights in apologizing toward the convicted itself, Mr. Speaker. Why is that so, Mr. Speaker? We think that by the status quo there is a stigmatized comes from the victims toward the unwrongful convicted. Why? Because we think that the victims within the court sue for the unwrongful convicted itself, Mr. Speaker, to aid in the punishment of the Mr. Speaker. And we think that by judicial review, when there is a more investigation to prove that unwrongful convicted is not really proven by them, and we think that it is as well, Mr. Speaker. The problem is that how the victims has no connector, Mr. Speaker, to give an apology to pursue that apology toward the unwrongful convicted itself, Mr. Speaker. And we think that our policies that really effective and also significant to give an access for the victims also unwrongful convicted itself. Because we think that government, as should accommodate for the victims and also unwrongful convicted to have a connection as well, Mr. Speaker. After they are having this judicial review as well, Mr. Speaker. So we are going to opening government. Firstly, we think that we need to promote what exactly the justice system that should be promoted whatsoever they are unwrongful convicted or unwrongful convicted, Mr. Speaker, or whether that this compensation is that really important and exclusive to be given to the unwrongful convicted to recover the harms that they got as well. Thank you.
It's so unclear coming from the government when government say that by using those compensations given to the wrongfully convicted, they will directly serve the justice, Mr. Speaker. We question them how they're gonna directly serve the justice that exists in certain countries by only giving the money towards these people, Mr. Speakers. Furthermore, what they're actually trying to propose us about in this table, Mr. Speakers, they're trying to propose us about how they're gonna clear their name and how they're gonna public apology towards all of the society that see that this is not the person that's supposed to do the wrong actor, Mr. Speakers. We say the status quo right now already provide that one, and we say the status quo right now is already enough instead of having those money, which we consider that giving those money will not serve justice in a particular country, right, Mr. Speakers. And let's analyze why actually these people can become the wrongfully convicted, Mr. Speakers. Because we do believe that these people, at the very first place, always related towards the cases, for example, the real wrong actor, Mr. Speakers. That's the justice that we are talking about, right, Mr. Speakers. Government must not take the risk, for example, just let go these criminals and not caught any suspects in certain cases, Mr. Speakers. The justice when we are talking about when government is trying to cater to all the safetyness of the society, right, Mr. Speakers, at the very first place, instead of taking risk and not caught any suspect that be related towards the particular cases, right, Mr. Speakers. Before I move on to more cases, several rebuttals towards the opening government sides of the House, Mr. Speakers. They claim that the court system must provide the fairness, Mr. Speaker.
Here.
Yes, we say that the court system must provide the fairness at the very first place, Mr. Speakers. But we say compensation is not the right fairness that we are talking about in these particular cases, Mr. Speakers. When they're actually already being convicted wrongly, for example, by the court or law system that exists in a certain country, Mr. Speakers, and they directly being released from the jail, for example, like Mr. Speakers, and let them feel the freedom that they're supposed to get, Mr. Speakers. We say it's already enough, Mr. Speakers. First of all, we say compensation is not the right way to go, Mr. Speakers. Furthermore, we say that to actually capture the real wrong actor and the real wrongdoer in certain cases is already enough, Mr. Speakers. And that's the justice what we are trying to propose about instead of giving those money towards those people at the very first place, that's Mr. Speakers. Because we do believe that by only giving money without actually capture the real wrongdoer of certain cases will not solve the problem that already exists in the status quo right now, Mr. Speakers. Going on to second idea, talking how they're talking about justice will be served by actually doing these actions, right, Mr. Speakers. We probably say that the current justice system is already enough, Mr. Speakers. For example, like we take example of United States. States, Mr. Speakers, when actually United States captured certain people and put them in jail, Mr. Speakers. For example, like this is the one for example, the father who really seek the fund to actually can fit their family, Mr. Speakers. We say United States already provides certain actions to enough, Mr. Speakers. For example, like the United States government will take care of the family where actually those fathers already being put in jail, Mr. Speakers. Furthermore, we say Indonesia also even served that one, Mr. Speakers, which we say the current justice system is already enough, Mr. Speakers. What we say that justice must always done their best, Mr. Speakers. Justice must not take the risk, Mr. Speakers. If you have suspects, but for example, like will not have clear investigations, Mr. Speakers, we must keep those people on hold first, Mr. Speakers, instead of sacrificing the dangerousness of the society out there, Mr. Speakers. Third idea, talking about how they need the money, for example, to go to psychology and to cover the psychology and so stuff like that, Mr. Speakers. We say the current system is already enough, Mr. Speakers. For example, like people using drugs and put it in jail, Mr. Speakers, they're already being given their rehabilitations inside the jail, Mr. Speakers. They actually have already been the education that actually taught that what they have actually done is wrong, Mr. Speakers. And we say it's already enough, Mr. Speakers. And what we're talking about justice when actually we give those freedom towards this wrongfully convicted and directly put the real wrongdoer towards the jail, Mr. Speakers. Going on to my first idea, talking about how compensation is not the right way to go to solve this problem, Mr. Speakers. Going on, talking about compensations that actually opening government is trying to talk us about is only by giving the money, Mr. Speakers. And the rest of clearing the name and public apology already exists in the status quo. So what we consider as a new material is only giving the money, Mr. Speakers. First, we say that it will not solve the problem, Mr. Speakers, because simply you give them only certain amount of money in form of apology, Mr. Speakers. But in fact, you do not provide any justice towards these people, Mr. Speakers. We say it's better when you actually punish the real wrongdoer in certain cases, Mr. Speakers. Because related towards every human nature of every single human individual, Mr. Speakers, when actually this every single individual will already be satisfied when actually they consider that at the first of the day they already consider that they are innocent, Mr. Speakers, and at the end of the day you capture the real wrongdoer, Mr. Speakers. There is justice what we are talking about, Mr. Speakers. We give fairness toward these people, Mr. Speakers. Furthermore, we say we also already take care about their family and so stuff like that, Mr. Speakers. And you punish the real wrongdoer. That's the justice we're talking about. Because we say let them go and clearing their names and also public apology is already enough in the status quo, Mr. Speakers. Going on to the idea why government already fulfilled the justice that exists in the country, Mr. Speakers. We do believe that in any certain cases, for example, very complicated, such as murder cases, Mr. Speakers, we say it's very complicated, Mr. Speakers. But the government is actually already trying to do the best. For example, like to serve investigations and so stuff like that, Mr. Speakers, and trying to put the real justice, trying to reveal the case, the real fact that already exists in certain cases, Mr. Speakers. We do believe also court and etc. and also law system, Mr. Speakers, have their own reasoning why they choose the people that is being suspected and put them in jail, Mr. Speakers. Let's have the illustration of drug dealers, Mr. Speakers. For example, like drug dealers is the one who really the wrongdoer in certain cases, Mr. Speakers. But for example, like the agent of these drug dealers sending drugs, for example, to another country, Mr. Speakers. Of course, we're gonna call that drug dealer's agent, right, Mr. Speakers, because we cannot have the direct access to actually caught the real drug dealers and the real wrongdoer, Mr. Speakers. We believe that the justice that we're talking about, when actually we provide safety towards the society, when actually we put on hold first this drug agent, and then when actually the fact already revealed that we need to capture the real drug dealers, then we're gonna directly release this drug agent, and then we're gonna directly capture the drug dealers, Mr. Speakers. We say that's already enough when actually already release this wrongly convicted and give them freedom and let them meet their family. We say it's already enough, Mr. Speakers. So what's opening opposition stance, Mr. Speakers? Opening opposition stance of justice, Mr. Speakers. But justice, what we are talking about, is not in form of money, but instead we capture the real wrongdoer and let them to be given the freedom that what they are supposed to have, Mr. Speakers. We are not there to oppose.